So if you have followed me, you have heard me talk a lot lately about sleep and the necessity of sleep. And I didn't used to get a lot of sleep. For much of my teen years and 20s, I never really slept at all, maybe 2-3 hours a night, just because I was always doing something. I loved sleeping, loved dreaming, still do, but it wasn't anything medicinal keeping me up or anything intellectual or thoughtful or psychotic. I was able to sleep if I wanted to. I just felt like I had other things I wanted to do. And as a young developing teen, going to school during the day, on weekends, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, I would go in to the radio station, 11 o'clock at night, work the midnight to 6 a.m. shift, Friday night, and then Saturday morning, 6 a.m., go home, get in bed by 6:30, sleep for a couple of hours, wake up, shower, eat, go back to the radio station by 10 a.m., and work there all day, working on the Husker game, the live broadcast. And I would finish like 3, 4, 5, go out, get something to eat, come back and do the supportive night shift on Nebraska football days. And then work the overnight shift from midnight to 6 a.m. Well, that wears you out. It kills you a little bit inside and makes you not be able to think very clearly. But when you're younger, you can sort of get over it. You can sort of slough it off. Even though young kids need a lot of sleep. That's why it's hard to wake them up, because their bodies are telling them they need to sleep. They should not be up running around. So I read a lot about sleep. I try to inform myself about sleep. Instead of getting 4 hours of sleep a night, I now try to get at least 7 hours of sleep at night, and it used to be 6 hours, but I've now upped it to 7. And one of the reasons that I try to up it to 7 hours is because of a researcher named Matt Walker. He is sort of the self-described king of sleep. But before I show you Matt, I'll just show you my Twitter feed, where that's kind of where my stream of consciousness comes and goes. Sometimes it stays, oftentimes it just disappears. And these are, over the years, some of the things I've said about sleep. I talk about dreams, I talk about sleeping your way to strength, inside information on how to live healthy, get some good sleep, talk about cat naps, people asking me, when do you sleep in 2017? What's wrong with you? Why are you always up? Oh, and here's today, 49 minutes ago. We're talking about sleep. That was fast. So, when we talk about sleep, we look to experts, people who know more than we know. And I found this guy through a doctor that I follow online. And this doctor supports this guy. Later came to know that they're pretty good friends, which I think should be disclosed right at the beginning of any interesting relationship you have with someone where money and reputations are involved. So this is Matt Walker, his public-facing faculty page. He's on the faculty of Berkeley, California, Berkeley University, in the Department of Psychology. And he is a professor. There's his email address. All of this is, I'm not doxing anybody, this is his page. And he explains what he does. He's a professor of neuroscience psychology, founder of Center for Human Sleep Science, And he's a well-known resource on sleep. Here is his Center for Sleepiness. I guess that's his personal page. I'll show that to you later. I have it somewhere else. So this is what led me into the deep sleep of Matt Walker, PhD. Walker, Texas Ranger. Reminds me of Matthew Walker, PhD. And it was an interesting book. You read the book and you think, oh my goodness, I'm going to die because I'm not getting enough sleep. And in my teens, I got 2 to 3 hours of sleep at night, and I'm doomed from my bad behavior from 30 years ago. Even the old Bill Gates, Why We Sleep is an important, fascinating book. Walker taught me a lot about this basic activity that every person on earth needs. I suspect this book will do the same for you, Bill Gates. Okay, so the media is behind Matt Walker. Bill Gates is behind Matt Walker. 4.5-star ratings, 14,500 positive reviews. Matt Walker's book, Why We Sleep. I've recommended this book to friends of mine because I thought I got a lot out of it. And because I am insoluble and because I like to know things, sometimes I do a little bit of searching and try to find more information. And this is Matt Walker's homepage. Sleep Diplomat. He's a professor. He's an author. And he's a speaker. Okay? Here are some of his TED Talks, okay? So here's one of them. I'll show you in the interest of fair use. I will show you just a bit of this TED Talk.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a little taste, a little fair use of Matt Walker's TED Talk. And while that was playing, my delightful friend Dora said she loves to sleep too, but noticed that since COVID and getting involved in art, I've gotten less sleep. Well, Dora, we got news for you. It's coming up. So, Matt Walker has a fun accent, and mainstream media in America loves an expert with an accent. He's charming, good-looking guy, funny, grabs him by the balls, as you might like to say, because that's exactly what he did at the beginning of that conversation, talking about men's testicles. Didn't talk about women's ovaries next, which I would have done. Just to be fair and organic. So he's a charming guy. He's mainstream. He has a book. Everyone loves to talk about sleep. NPR. Matt Walker, why is it essential to make time for sleep? It's an interview with Matt Walker. Okay. There you go. Everything you'd ever want to know about sleep, Matt Walker's going to tell you. So far, so good. So far, we're okay. So far, we're interested. Oh, Matt Walker. What a great guy. And then maybe you do an internet search on Matt Walker and sleep. And you go past the first page of the search results. And the second page. And you come upon what I am calling Matt Walker's worst nightmare. And Matt Walker's worst nightmare is named Alexey Guzey. He's Russian. He's a young man. Who is he? He's a very curious young man who cares about getting things right. And this is his webpage. This is who he is about. Right here. Tells you right here. He talks about his intellectual influences. He talks about metascience, biology, and philanthropy. If you want to learn more about him, right up front, he talks about his favorite movies. He talks about being a college student. He talks about his depression. He talks about friendship. He also has done lots of interviews in English and in Russian. So what has Alexey Guzey done? He has very strictly and very beautifully provided us with an opposite point of view on Matt Walker and his book on sleep. And this is what I happened upon when I was doing my deep dive into more about Matt Walker to learn more about him. I came across this page. And, to be dramatic, the world changed for me as I read this. Matt Walker's Why We Sleep is riddled with scientific and factual errors. Originally posted in 2019, updated April of 2021. So it's an ongoing effort. And you read this very specific, absolute evisceration of Matt Walker's reputation and research into his Why We Sleep book. And I'll just run you through some of this. This is the table of contents. A shorter sleep does not imply shorter lifespan. And all of these are links that go to more information. So if you go here, you click on this, which is really on the same page, but we'll keep going. So this is Alexey taking on point by point Matt Walker's book, the introduction. And Alexey says, in the process of reading the book and encountering some extraordinary claims about sleep, I decided to compare the facts presented with scientific literature. I found that the book consistently overstates the problem of lack of sleep, sometimes egregiously so. It misrepresents basic sleep research and contradicts its own sources. He continues. In one instance, Walker claims that sleeping less than, should be fewer than, 6 hours or 7 hours a night doubles one's risk of cancer. This is not supported by scientific evidence, and he provides your information. In another instance, Walker seems to have invented a fact that the WHO declared a sleep loss epidemic. In yet another instance, he falsely claims that the National Sleep Foundation recommends 8 hours of sleep per night and then uses that fact to falsely claim that 2/3 of people in developed nations sleep less than, fewer than, the recommended 8 hours of nightly sleep. Yes, Nora, we're going to find out what happens about science. So point by point, word by word, it is a slow flaying of Matt Walker, his reputation and his research. And here's all of the evidence that he goes and that Alexey shows you about what's happening. Sleeping less than 6 hours does not double your risk of cancer. On page 3, Walker writes, routinely sleeping less than 6 or 7 hours, doubling the risk of cancer. This is false. Walker does not cite any studies that support this assertion anywhere in the book. There do not appear to exist any experimental studies or studies that would reasonably be able to establish causality that would support this claim. Even when the epidemiological evidence, which you should almost never use to claim causality, disagrees with Walker's assertion. For example, a systematic review of 65 studies from 2018, which involved 1 million participants in 86,000 cancer cases, found that neither short nor long sleep duration was associated with the increased risk. And here is the table that proves that point. So who's the expert here? Matt Walker, PhD? Matt Walker, Texas Ranger, Berkeley, California? Or Alexey Guzey, who didn't seem to enjoy college that much and who has a web page where he publishes what he finds out and researches. So this was my beginning of a wake-up call that maybe what I read was not true. And I have been raised and trained by very smart and interesting people to not always believe what you read. And sometimes you get a little fooled. So this just keeps going on and on and on and on. Interlude. No, you cannot randomly cite 2,000-page long books and hope nobody will read them. On page 6, Walker writes, every species studied to date sleeps. This is false. At least according to Walker's own source when making this claim, he cites the Encyclopedia of Sleep, which turns out to be a 2,736 page that costs $2,000. Fortunately, Walker tells us that we should search for this information somewhere in Volume 1 or the first 638 pages of the book. Anyway, page 38 reads, it now appears it may be many species reduce sleep for long periods of time under normal circumstances, and that others do not sleep at all in the way sleep is conventionally defined. Alexey goes on, sleep will not kill you. No, the World Health Organization never declared sleep loss an epidemic. It's very soundly supported. The potential harm done by the Walker book. And Alexey argues, first, Walker's misrepresentation of sleep deprivation therapy is likely to make many people with depression avoid this potent and largely safe treatment option. Second, imagine that a 20-year-old who naturally needs to sleep for 7 hours a night reads Why We Sleep, gets scared, decides to spend the full 8 hours in bed every day. Then, assuming that they live until 75, they will waste more than 20,000 hours or more than 2 years of their life with uncertain long-term side effects. And then he talks about a person who thanks him for the research he did. The conclusion, we have no idea about the optimal long-term sleep duration and its effects. All the evidence we have about this in the form of these essentially meaningless correlation studies. But if you're going to use bad science to guide your sleeping habits, at least use accurate bad science. Then acknowledgement, citation. Well, this just was so thorough and so awful and so mind-blowing that I really didn't know what to think. Although I did know what to think. Oh, and then he goes on to copying and pasting papers, plagiarizing his own work. That's what it appears. The Lancet papers on the left, New York papers on the right. Identical text is highlighted in red. Image created with the help of copy leaks. Arguing that it appears Matt Walker is citing his own sources to give himself authority. Common objections. Walker is a professor of psychology and neuroscience at Berkeley. Who are you? Well, I'm Alexey. I have a Bachelor of Science in Math and Economics. During my undergrad, I took 2 years of statistics. So there are people who are attacking him and accusing him. And what do you know? He's Matt Walker, Texas Ranger, Texas Sleep Ranger. And who are you? You're nobody. You're some Russian kid who didn't enjoy college. Where did Matt Walker get his PhD? Now, what did Matt Walker do to deserve this? Well, he wrote a book, made himself into a celebrity, did a lot of interviews, and a regular person said, wait a minute, I'm going to take a look at this. And the most interesting part of this takedown, this evisceration of Matt Walker's book that Alexey did, was done only, this deep dissection was only done in chapter 1. Alexey read the whole book, but he said, why would I take apart the whole book when just reading chapter 1, I found all these problems with it? What's the point of it? Where is the authority? Where is the research? So, I emailed Alexey, as he invites you to do. And I said, I read everything that you wrote. I printed it out. I researched it myself. I looked at the sources that you quoted myself. And it's just mind-blowing. I think you did a wonderful job in taking on Matt Walker, Texas Ranger sleep doctor. And he said thank you. He was very gracious. And then at the very end he said, hey, if you want me to take a look at anything you've written, just let me know. I screamed a little bit inside, because I'm not sure that anything I've ever written would be able to stand up to this kind of casual research. And isn't that true about anything? Anything anybody says can always be proven wrong and be taken apart. So where does this leave us as regular people trying to figure out how much, should I get up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m.? Do I believe Matt Walker, or do I believe in Alexey Guzey's takedown? It's a very difficult situation, and I'm not exactly sure what the solution is. But a lot of people have had really interesting conversations with Alexey about this book. And if you go to YouTube, you can see a lot of interviews that Alexey has done talking about it. And in the interest of fair use, I'm going to play you just a little bit from the John Berardi show. I encourage you to go listen to the full interview. But just so you can get a little bit of taste of who is this Alexey person, well, this is who he is.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing that I do is I try to get a lot of people to read my drafts before I make them public. And I try to get specialists on the topics. So for example, before I published the Why We Sleep piece, I asked a couple of professional sleep researchers who I trusted to look over my draft and tell me if there is anything wrong with it. And I asked a lot of my friends. I think like maybe around 30 people, maybe more, ended up reading my article before I published it. So by the point that I made it public, it was both vetted by smart generalists and by specialists, and I was I was really confident that the book is wrong and I am right, and it I believe ended up being the case. Not a single like significant statement that I made in the essay ended up being shown wrong. I believe there was some like small inaccuracy about the kinds of antidepressants available today, which is mostly relevant, and I noted that fact in the post. But I think my procedures worked really well here. And for the other post, I actually sent it to someone who is closely related to the author of the book for review, because, well, I did not want to send it to the author of the book because I thought that the interaction would probably sound adversarial, but I thought that it would be, it is important to like get the other side to review my arguments and to let them respond before I make the claims public. So I sent that post to someone close to the author, and they reviewed it. Well, they read it, but they did not review the post.
Okay, so that's what you do. He has someone review his review of Matt Walker. He reaches out, tries to get a comment. No comment. I reached out to Matt Walker and asked him about this takedown of his chapter in his book. Would not respond to me. And who am I? That's fine. But I don't believe Matt Walker has ever acknowledged Alexey's work. And I think we know why. So who else is this Alexey? Well, this is his website. Institutions of science are broken. NewScience.org aims to build new institutions of basic science, starting with life sciences. And here are the people, what they're doing. They're trying to put truth and extra research into what passes as current research. And here's his team. Alexey created this. There he is. Alexey, writer, researcher, studying the structure of science, grew up in Moscow. Metascience research, discussed at BBC Wired. Reach out if you find his website interesting. So he has built his own team now in the essence of trying to find out the truth about what people write about science and research. And it is a necessary continuation of thought. And he'll always get that look, you're not institutionalized in that. You don't have a PhD. You're not a teacher. You're not at Berkeley. You're not an Ivy Leaguer. You're just a young guy from Moscow. Who are you? Why don't you just go away? And I find great value in people who stand up to the system and say, well, I don't think this is quite right. I read your book, and I believed it, and then I did my research, and I found out a lot of the things you said weren't true. So where do you go with that information? Do you keep it to yourself? Or do you publish something? And in that same vein of Alexey, I now take you to Retraction Watch, which is a very, very interesting website. They need a lot of support because it's just kind of people work. I believe they got a MacArthur grant, though. Retraction Watch is a watchdog organization that tracks scientifically published articles, researches them, and in every case, if a published article is wrong or has been withdrawn by the publisher, they report on it. Because by default we think, well, if it's in a journal, it must be right. Well, if Matt Walker wrote this book, how could it be wrong? He's been on the Today Show. And then an Alexey stands up and says, well, hey, hang on just a minute. And then a Retraction Watch stands up and says, now wait just a minute. I don't believe what you said is true, and you need to take that back. So let's look at a Retraction Watch. Science Journal retracts a paper after university investigation finds carelessness and lack of attention to detail. Now, this is not ever reported until Retraction Watch. Things get published, and things get pulled back. But some of those published items get called and quoted by other places and other people as if it's a fact, when it gets withdrawn later. Here's another one. Clear evidence of theft brings down meningitis paper with dodgy images. People fake their images. Bad math, COVID treatment. And there are people who appear on Retraction Watch who then go and sue Retraction Watch. And Retraction Watch says, my defense is the truth. Your paper was withdrawn by your publisher. Go yell at them. I'm just reporting what happened. Anatomy Journal retracts 13 papers. So as you read Retraction Watch, you begin to realize, well, maybe these things that we're told are true, maybe they were never true. Maybe they are true. How do we know? I teach my students. Look, sometimes we do things, we research things, and we find out what we thought, what we argued in our paper, what we tried to prove in our scientific study. Turns out in the end, that what we thought was not right. What we tried to prove was proven back to us wrong. And that should be published. Here's what we did. This is the science we put behind it, and what we found out is that we were wrong. But publishers don't want to publish things that are wrong or that are proven wrong. They want to publish right. They want to be on the side of knowing. They want to be on the side of expansion. Well, sometimes to learn, you have to contract a little bit. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to say we thought we had a theory about this, and we did this study with 1,000 people, and it came back null. Fix it. Just like when we talk about these chess puzzles that we do every so often, where the goal is to checkmate the other king. Why can't a puzzle be just the opposite? How can you protect your king from this assault that's coming to you? And you win the puzzle by moving a few pieces where your king is now in safety. That could be a puzzle too. But if you're checkmating somebody, well, there's no coming out of that because it's over, it's checked. Well, if you did research and you found out that you need 5 hours of sleep instead of 6 hours of sleep, and we definitively proved it, well, there you go. Well, we did a study and we needed 10 hours of sleep a day, and it turned out not to be right at all. Well, let's put that out there too. They don't want to do that. They want stars. They want decisions. They don't think that we, the mind-numbingly middle-of-the-road people, can handle saying, well, it could be both ways. We really don't know. They want science to be definite, and science doesn't know anything. That's what we know. Ivermectin COVID-19 study retracted. Authors blame a mix-up. So we have one hand, this is true, this is not true. We have arguments between Matt Walker and Alexey, and we have Retraction Watch, and Retraction Watch is being sued for reporting the truth. And then something like this hits. Harvard. Earlier this year. Sleep well and reduce your risk of dementia and death. May of 2021. Written by an MD. Inadequate sleep in midlife may lead to dementia. Now you read this, and it's terrifying. What's new here is that inadequate sleep in midlife after 50 raises one's risk of dementia. There are many reasons for poor sleep in middle age: shift work, insomnia, caretaking responsibilities, anxiety, pressing deadlines, just to name a few. Although not all of these are controllable, some are. For example, if you're currently only sleeping 4 to 5 hours because you're up late working every night, you might want to change your habits, because otherwise you risk developing dementia by the time you retire. And this is presented to us as absolutely proven deadfall fact, reported in many mainstream newspapers and journals. And I believe there's truth to it, just knowing how sleep affects how you think and behave and act, but I'm not a scientist. I'm not Alexey. Should Alexey go after this? Probably will. But this not knowing creates great concern for people trying to find out what is going on. And there used to be a lot of toughness, especially in younger people, saying, I'll sleep when I die. But as long as I'm alive, I'm going to keep going. Well, what are you going to do if you don't sleep and you get to be age 50, 55, 60, and you start getting dementia because your brain didn't ever get a rest to clean itself? So he did a little more research on this same thing. Here we go. National Institutes of Health. April of 2021. Lack of sleep in middle age may increase dementia risk. And you read this, and you're absolutely terrified. Researchers examined data from nearly 8,000 people in Britain, starting at age 50. Participants were assessed on a wide variety of measures, including being asked on 6 occasions between 1985, a long-term study, and 2016, how many hours they slept a night. To assess the accuracy of this self-reporting, some of the participants wore accelerometers to objectively measure sleep time, meaning if you're flat on your back, this is how Apple Watch works. If you're flat on your back, and then you get up to go to the bathroom or you move around, you're not sleeping. Over the course of the study, 521 participants were diagnosed with dementia at an average rate of 77. So there is the danger. You're 50 years old, you're working, you're in the prime of your life, you cannot sleep, coronavirus is all around you. And you think, well, what can I do? I can't sleep. So you don't sleep like you should. And then you hit age 77, and you're done. You have dementia. Can't take care of yourself. So it's probably better to err on the side of getting a little more sleep than not getting enough sleep. But how many hours is enough? In my informal research that I share with you as an informal person, 6 hours is the absolute deadfall minimum for sleep. Okay is 8. 9 is okay. Anything over 10, I've read, can be just as dangerous as not getting enough sleep. So I sort of split in the middle. 6, 7, 8, I go for 7 hours. That's what I aim for. And sometimes it's earlier than that. Sometimes I only get 5.5. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to get 7.5 hours of sleep. So it's not just in the knowing, it's in the doing. And these can be very difficult times for us all. So, we know where we started. We know where we're ending. We know it's in between. And we know what's new and what's coming for us. And that is where we are. Where do we go? Who do we trust? How do we know we're going to get out of this alive? How do we know we're going to get out of any of this without causing great distress? It's a very disturbing and cautious tale of trying to remain healthy and wealthy and wise and not go into dementia just because you're not getting enough sleep. And even artificial sleep with medication can do great damage. So we've opened this conversation, and I'm very interested to see what you might like to say in a future conversation.